They called him Tsar, but his crown was not gold. It was iron, and it dripped with blood. He slaughtered nobles. He slaughtered peasants. He slaughtered his own people by the tens of thousands. And when fury consumed him, he turned his iron staff upon his own son, the heir to Russia itself, and killed him with his bare hands. This is not just a ruler's story. This is Russia's nightmare. Winter, 1570. The city of Novgorod trembled. Its bells rang prayers of mercy. Its priests lifted icons. Its people clutched children. But mercy never came. Ivan the Terrible rode in with the oprichniki, his black-robed riders with dogs' heads on their saddles, brooms tied to their spears, symbols of their purpose, to sniff out treason and sweep it away. They whisper against me? Then let them whisper to the flames. For 5 weeks, Novgorod burned. The oprichniki dragged families from their homes. Men were nailed to wooden planks and hurled into frozen rivers. Women were stripped, beaten, and violated before being hacked apart. Infants were tossed into the air and caught on spears. The Volkhov River turned red with blood. So many bodies were dumped beneath the ice that the current itself choked. Novgorod will be loyal in silence because no one will be left to speak. 20, 30, 40,000 dead. An ancient city turned into a grave. And still Ivan sat upon his horse, watching as though he were not witnessing massacre, but conducting a symphony of screams. Day after day, the executions continued. The Volkhov River became a coffin. Bodies drifted beneath the ice, their pale faces staring upward like saints drowned in glass. The oprichniki laughed as they pushed more into the current, turning murder into sport. Fires roared across the city. Icons cracked. Church bells rang not for prayer, but for horror. Better a river of corpses than a city of traitors. The people of Novgorod were slaughtered not because they rebelled, but because Ivan imagined they might. His paranoia became prophecy, and prophecy became genocide. By the time the snow melted, there were no families left intact, no voices left to resist, only silence, only ghosts, only the memory of fire and a river clogged with bones. This was Ivan's justice, a justice written in ash and ice, a justice that proved no Russian was safe, not city, not priest, not peasant, not even his blood. Ivan was 3 when the crown of Russia was placed on his head. 3 years old, too small to lift a sword, too young to know his father was dead, too young to understand that a throne was not protection, but a coffin. His boyhood was chains of humiliation. The boyars, Russia's nobles, seized power. They stole food from his table, whipped him when he complained, and mocked him as the little orphan in a crown. They treat me like a dog. One day I will be the master, and they the dogs. He grew not in comfort, but in cruelty, starved, beaten, spat upon, until the child's heart hardened into iron. By 12, he threw live animals from Kremlin towers, watching them scream as they shattered below. Ivan was not born terrible. He was forged terrible. The boyars had raised their executioner. In 1547, the Kremlin bells roared. The boy orphan was no longer a child. At 16, Ivan was crowned Tsar, the first in Russia to claim the title. Gold and jewels glittered on his robes. Incense burned thick. Priests intoned prayers of empire. And yet, behind the holy ceremony, stood a boy who had never forgotten the hunger, the whips, the laughter. I am not your plaything anymore. I am Tsar, by God and by fire. For Russia, it was the birth of an empire. For Ivan, it was the beginning of revenge. That same year, Moscow burned. A fire tore through the wooden city, consuming homes, churches, markets. Thousands died in smoke and screams. The people whispered it was God's warning, that their new czar carried a curse. If fire shadows me, then let fire be my crown. Ivan married Anastasia Romanovna. For a moment there was light. Anastasia soothed the storm in him. Her gentleness tempered his fire. Her counsel guided his wrath. But mercy does not last long in a man born of wolves, and fate would strip Anastasia away, unleashing the beast she had barely chained. Even in his early reign, Ivan trusted no one. The boyars who mocked him still stood in gilded halls. Priests whispered of omens, rivals plotted in shadows, and Ivan, scarred by betrayal from birth, saw treason everywhere. Better to strike first, better to spill blood before blood spills me. Thus began the policy that would define him. Rule by terror, reward loyalty with gold, answer suspicion with death, and cloak every decree in the language of God. Russia had crowned a czar. What it gained was a storm that would not pass, but would drench the land in blood. She was the only anchor he had, Anastasia Romanovna, the tsaritsa who soothed his storms, the woman who spoke where no boyar dared, the only voice he trusted. Then she sickened, her body withered, her eyes dimmed, and in 1560 she was gone. Ivan wept like a man stabbed in the gut, but grief in him was not soft, it was steel heated white. They poisoned her, he roared. They killed my Anastasia. Whether true or not, he believed it, and belief was enough to break the czar. The woman who held back the beast was gone, and the beast no longer leashed. Grief twisted into suspicion. Suspicion festered into rage. Rage bloomed into paranoia. Every boyar's smile was venom. Every priest's prayer was treachery. Every shadow whispered murder. I will not be their puppet, Ivan thundered. I will not be their prey. So he struck first. Ministers dragged to dungeons, advisers accused of treason, friends strangled in silence. Ivan's court became a graveyard, and still, it was not enough. Then, in 1564, he vanished. The Tsar abandoned Moscow, took his court, his treasures, his rage, and fled. Letters arrived, accusations burned into parchment. The boyars, he declared, were traitors, the clergy, liars, the state, rotten. I renounce this throne. Let Russia choke on its own corruption. Panic. The boyars clawed at each other. The people wailed. A czarless Russia was a corpse waiting for carrion. And then the trap was sprung. Ivan returned, but not as before. He demanded absolute power, beyond law, beyond church, beyond God himself. Give me the right to purge traitors, he thundered. Give me power, or Russia will rot. They begged him to return. They gave him everything, and from that bargain, the Oprichnina was born. Black-clad riders, skulls on their saddles, dogs' heads hanging from their reins, the Tsar's private army of terror, the Oprichniki, hounds of Ivan, executioners of Russia, and with them, the reign of nightmare truly began. Moscow, 1547. The bells of the Kremlin shook the sky. Inside the golden walls, a boy became more than a boy. At 16, Ivan sat upon the throne of Russia, not as prince, not as Grand Duke, but as Tsar, the first to claim the title of Caesar in the Russian tongue. I am not merely a ruler of men. I am chosen of God, The crowd knelt. The priests bowed. And in that moment, Ivan looked down and saw not subjects, but prey. The crown glittered. The orb shone. The scepter felt heavy in his palm, but it was not heavy enough. For in Ivan's eyes, one throne was too small. He dreamed of a throne that stretched across rivers, forests, nations, and to claim it, he would use fire. Months after his coronation, Moscow burned. Flames roared through wooden streets. Houses screamed as they collapsed. The city that crowned him became his furnace. Thousands died in a single night. The air black with smoke. The river clogged with ash. They whisper the city cursed me. No, I curse them all. As Moscow smoldered, Ivan's mind darkened. His rage turned outward. If the city could fall in flame, so could every rival. So could every betrayer. The fire was not just accident. It was omen, a mirror of the man who wore the crown. From that night, Ivan was no longer a boy king. He was fire in human form, and Russia would burn with him. The Tsar's hunger turned south, to Kazan, the Tatar stronghold on the Volga. For centuries the Mongols had raided Russia. Their horsemen stole children, burned villages, carried chains. Ivan swore the chains would break, and that Kazan itself would drown in Russian steel. No more tribute, no more fear. Now they will kneel. The Russian armies marched with cannons, monstrous guns that spat thunder, iron, and death. The earth shook. The walls of Kazan cracked. When the city finally fell, the slaughter began. Men cut down in the streets, women dragged screaming from their homes, children skewered on pikes as warnings. Ivan called it holy war, but the Volga ran red, and the Tsar's crown gleamed brighter in the smoke. Ivan turned on his own. Whispers of treason in Novgorod reached his ears. The city of merchants, rich, proud, independent, too independent. He rode with his oprichniki, black-clad riders, symbols of skull and dog's head, executioners on horseback. Novgorod dreams of betrayal. Then let Novgorod dream in blood. For weeks, the massacre thundered. Thousands drowned in the Volkhov River. Families chained together, pushed beneath the ice. Priests beaten in their churches, merchants gutted in their halls. The city's cries rose like smoke to the heavens. But the heavens were silent. Only Ivan's laughter carried over the frozen river. Novgorod was not conquered. It was erased. Its bones left beneath snow and ice, and its ashes became part of Ivan's crown. In 1565, Ivan split his realm in two, one half for Russia, one half for himself. This was the Oprichnina, a land ruled not by law, but by terror, a state inside a state. Its heart black, its veins dripping blood. He gathered horsemen cloaked in black, bearing the symbols of the dog's head and the broom. The dog's head, to tear the flesh of traitors. The broom, to sweep them from the earth. I am the hand of God, and these are my hounds. They rode into towns like storm clouds, doors smashed, families dragged into snow, heads piled in marketplaces. The smell of rot became Russia's incense. The Oprichnina was not an army. It was a plague on horseback, and its master was Ivan. No man was safe, no boy too young, no woman too fragile. Ivan's terror fed on suspicion, and suspicion was everywhere. Whole families were bound and thrown into icy rivers, villages erased because one farmer muttered the wrong word, nobles impaled in public squares, their estates seized, their children starved in dungeons. Better 1,000 innocents dead than one traitor alive. The land became a graveyard. The snow stained black with blood. Russia did not breathe without fear. The Tsar ruled not with crown or scepter, but with axe, gallows, and fire. One town defied him, Pereyaslav, small, defiant, stubborn. Ivan rode there with his black riders. They came with whips, with torches, with iron chains. Let them learn what defiance costs. The town was surrounded, the gates torn apart, families dragged to the square. Men were beaten until their skulls cracked. Women stripped and scourged in the frost. Children tossed into flames as their mothers wailed. The massacre lasted for days. Pereyaslav ceased to exist. Ivan called it justice. History calls it horror. But terror does not end at the borders of towns. It seeps into hearts, into whispers, into dreams. Moscow itself became haunted. Nobles vanished at night, their estates silent by dawn. Merchants strangled in alleys, clergy dragged from their pulpits, their sermons erased in blood. Better fear me than betray me. Even the Kremlin shook with dread. The Tsar's court became a theater of executions. One glance, one gesture, one shadow of suspicion, and the axe fell. Moscow, once the jewel of the realm, now cowered like a prisoner in its own chains. Ivan had made his capital not a city, but a graveyard that still walked. The years did not cool him. They consumed him. Ivan prowled his palaces like a wolf in a cage. He saw treachery in every shadow. He saw poison in every cup. He saw betrayal in the eyes of his own blood. And so he unleashed the Oprichniki once more. Black-cloaked riders thundered through the streets, their whips wet with blood, their swords drunk with the flesh of their own countrymen. "They call me terrible," Ivan roared. "I call it mercy, mercy that I do not kill them all." Villages burned. Priests were hanged from their own bells. Children crushed beneath hooves. The land of Russia wailed louder than foreign wars. Novgorod, a proud city, but Ivan smelled rebellion in its stones. His riders descended like locusts. For 5 weeks, the city was butchered alive. Women drowned in frozen rivers. Monks flayed alive in their monasteries. Children torn from mothers and hurled onto spears. "This is not punishment," Ivan spat. "This is cleansing." Tens of thousands lay dead, their blood freezing in the streets. Novgorod was not conquered. It was erased. But the final victim of Ivan's madness was his own flesh and blood. A quarrel, a burst of rage. The Tsar struck his heir with an iron staff. The boy collapsed. Blood pooled across the palace floor. Ivan's scream tore through the walls, not of power, but of a father who had murdered his future. "You have killed your son, and with him, your dynasty." Russia's crown was shattered, its throne soaked with the blood of its own heir. Years later, the butcher sat alone. The man who drowned his people in fire and blood now sagged like a shadow in his robes. March 1584. Ivan reached for a chess piece, and death reached for him. He fell, not on the battlefield, not beneath a crown, but in silence, gasping, while Russia whispered relief. He killed his son. He killed his people, but in the end, he could not outlive his own terror. He left Russia broken. Villages burned, cities emptied, a throne cursed. He crowned himself Tsar, but he ruled not as father of his people, only as their executioner. Ivan IV, the terrible, the Tsar who slaughtered his own people and wore their screams as his crown.
There are more stories waiting, stories they tried to erase. Click and step into the next one. And if this tale gripped you, like, share, and subscribe. Every click keeps the fire burning, and every share makes sure the Empire never forgets. Like the story, hit subscribe, share it so the Empire remembers, and keep watching. The next reckoning is waiting.